Greetings to everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the first panel discussion of Vidzeme University of Applied Sciences International Week. But as you know, we have already a few more in the following days, so please follow the program. My name is Vera. Today I'm going to take the role of moderator of panel discussion University Transformation Experience. And actually, why it's important to talk about this topic? There is quite many reasons. Taking into account global events, they're happening very fast, they're affected by globalization, the consequences and threats of the war, unfortunately, including the recent and still felt effect of COVID-19, rapid digitalization, generational changes, and many other rules that are taking place in the world and are changing it irreversibly, which is why here in Vidzeme University of Applied Sciences, we have launched with the partners new research and innovation project, Accelerate Future HEI, which focuses on supporting and enhancing the capability of higher education institutions. And those partners are University Industry Innovation Network, St. Pölten University of Applied Sciences, UCLL University of Applied Sciences, University of Madeira, Hungarian University of Agriculture and Life Sciences, University of Lisbon, the Polytechnic University of Timișoara, University of Reunion, Universidad de Europa, TAM International, and also Momentum Consulting. And today's panel discussion aim is to get acquainted with the experience of transformation of higher education institutions in various fields and various levels, and to give at least this small insight how different examples of transformation can be. What are the good practices of universities and what obstacles universities face when they want to change something, transform things and their operations and promote their growth. And finally, after this long introducing, I have that pleasure to introduce you with the main people here, the panel discussion participants. Ladies first, Agnese Davidsson, Rector, Associate Professor and Leading Researcher of Vidzeme University of Applied Sciences. Gari Ragma, Associate Professor at University of Tartu Parno College. Mahenda Reddy Gavinola, Assistant Professor at National Institute of Tourism and Hospitality Management. And finally, Franz Fiedler, Professor, Head of Department of Media and Digital Technologies of St. Pölten University of Applied Sciences. At the beginning, I'll already give you a small insight of transformation, so I would like to start with this introductory question for each of you, where you should think and also share with us, of course, the transformation experience that really made a difference in each of your institutions, for example, in the last 5 years. So feel free to start. I'll look at Mahender, maybe he can start.
Okay. Yeah. Before I start with my experience, let me give a general overview about the higher education in India. And, you know, when it comes to the universities, we are the largest universities in terms of the number of students, and we have about 1,200 universities, and it's very difficult to manage. And, you know, these days there are so many changes that are happening in India, and particularly our government want to change the education system that we adopted, you know, several years back because of the colonial rule or whatever. And now the new education policy that was introduced in the year 2020 is mainly focusing on the indigenous knowledge and aligning with sustainable development goals, change in the education, particularly practice, you know, basically providing employment, aligning the programs with the industry requirement. You know, these are the some of the areas that we are focusing with Education Policy 2020. And I represent National Institute of Tourism and Hospitality Management, which is a sector-specific institution. And we have own advantages and disadvantages of being a sector-specific institution. Of course, it is a small institution. We have a flexibility in terms of, certain practices, particularly, curriculum, teaching, learning, and but at the same time, we are just limited to a specific area. And we are missing the multidisciplinary approach compared to the universities. In the universities, it's quite common, they can choose the different programs, credit-based system, different options they have. So these all are an advantage, but when it comes to the sector-specific institutions, this is a challenge for us. And the new education policies are focusing on internationalization of education. And in that particular regard, our university is doing quite well, particularly from past 5 to 6 years. Well, before we implemented the new education policy, we started focusing on internationalization of the institution. And we had, of course, from past 20 years, students coming from the various parts of the universities. However, particularly, the faculty exchange and student exchange was missing. I mean, students were coming just to join the full-time program, but not part of exchange program. And that could be one of the things that I can say, that changed in the first of maybe 6 to 7 years of time. And in that regard, this particular university played a major role because of the collaboration with Wisdom University. And at that particular period of time, we started a student and a faculty exchange program, and that particular thing has given a lot of a boost to the institution, particularly learning several things from the Wisdom University. And one of the transformation that we had over the 5 years, like almost every year we could start the International Teaching Week, which is one of the important thing for us. And we have professors coming from the Middle East, Africa, and various parts of the world, and particularly from Latvia every year. That is one of the things that we could do from past 5 years. And second, when I use the word sector-specific institution, it is mainly limited to the skill-based education system. And that particular thing is also changing because of the industry needs, and we were mainly focusing on skill-based, but now the government is expecting us to do the research. And in the research area also, what we call the third mission, particularly connecting the industry and academia, in that regard also we are doing a lot, and particularly Wisdom University also helping us, and that is also another transformation that happened, and we could see a lot of changes in terms of publications and focus on research. Yeah, that is another thing. Maybe, yeah, one more thing that not specifically to India, but in general, specifically to our institution, but in general in India, the new education policy is focusing on setting up foreign universities and also recruiting the professors, basically with a concept called, professor from the practice or the industry. That is also another thing that is happening. In that regard, still, we are lacking in certain areas. Of course, we started that process, and that is happening. One of the, in most of the popular universities in India, but still it need to be done in the lower level institutions. This is about, the transformation, particularly, the International Week and the research. These things I could say that happened in our institution.
Sounds like quite a lot of things happening. Thank you. So let's continue with the front.
Yeah, so if you ask for the factors that triggered our transformation, there are some things that are on purpose, but there was one very little and small thing that was not on purpose, but I think it transformed us all. That was a little virus, and it started a total transformation and change. So, as you recall, we all went from like presence teaching to distance learning, distance teaching. And this was one thing that we didn't want, but we learned a lot out of this. And when we came back after the pandemic, we really made use of the good things that we learned during these times, and we left out things that we don't like about it. So in that sense, even if it was externally triggered, it was a good factor for the transformation of the university. And then we had another very important thing which occurred at the same time. We opened a new campus. And strategically, it was already designed that we could have these hybrid experiences in teaching and learning. So from a presence university, we really changed to a university that is able to do everything, to teach in presence, but to also teach from afar and to do hybrid formats. And that was an important step, and we really focused also on doing hybrid formats and distance learning for labs and for studios. And that's something that it's difficult to do, but once you know how to do it and once you introduce it, it's a good value for the students and also for the lecturers themselves. And the third thing I have to mention was UDRES, because with this consortium, it was also a really good shift in the mindset of all the people within the university, but also, I think, a shift in the mindset of our partners. And Hannes Raffoseder, the CEO of our university, also likes to mention the 9 I's. So it's about interdisciplinarity, it's about internationality. We have a lot of intersectoral work now. It's innovative, it inspires all of us, and it's intense, yes, we know that. It's a lot of work, but it's a work we all like to do. So this really transforms culture.
Thank you. Gary?
Yeah. Transformation in universities, this is a bit tricky, because universities have been existing so long, hundreds of years. And the same applies to Chartered University, which has soon there will be 400 years anniversary. It has been always there, or almost always, from this period. And it's so big and so many different departments, and in general, it doesn't change much. And this is actually the problem of all Europe, because there's even defined a European paradox of universities, because there are a lot of wise people, but this knowledge is not approaching the companies and organizations who really need it, because the attention of those academic persons is somewhere else. We speak about our tower, that we're sitting there and looking to the grounds and some nice people there, and we then describing what they're doing there and writing about that, and those people have no clue what we talking about them, and they have, and we have actually not reality. We don't have a sense of reality, what they're actually in reality doing, because every researcher is looking only their own very narrow angle. But when I'm thinking about the college, we are from Udine. This is regional thing, regional animal, and Tartu University has actually 4 units outside of Tartu. One is Tallinn office. There is also Law Institute, which is a bit different thing. But all those regional units, we felt different periods. And what was 5 years ago, this was dispute in the rector's office and in the council that maybe we don't need them, maybe we can close them, and lack of money and etc. Luckily, this was changed, this attitude was changing during the last years, and there were several factors. We can go later to that. But when we started 5 years ago, there was, on the account there was minus 18,000 and 30 people. And some things before, there were more than 60 people working. And so the drop was quite significant. And then we were back 60 plus people, and last week I looked, we had 800 plus in the account. So that we did something what was probably, made it more sustainable, but we can discuss it later more detailedly.
Thank you. And finally, Agnese.
Yeah, now we come to the hosts of the event. Let me start with a story, a scary story. Recently, I was in a conference, and the keynoter, he opened his speech with a very horrible thing. He thought that this morning I was in a museum. And the museum was a big castle up high in the hills. It used to be the seat of the rulers of an empire. And he said, now you could see where these structures basically that somehow became irrelevant have ended to. So this is a museum. Long empty galleries, open office hours basically, and nothing kind of happening there anymore. And this was a comparison he wanted to make. So this is what may happen to universities if they are not transforming. And what I noted down during his speech was that besides this, we have to educate, we have to research, we have to do everything. We have to adapt. So that's maybe one of the most important things we have to think every day when we wake up in the morning. How can we adapt as individuals, as institutions, as systems of education? So world is changing very fast. You already mentioned many different things. So national policies, international trends, epidemics, and so far, that this context is changing extremely quickly. So we have to be aware that the transformation or change is the only new normal basically for us. And if I speak about WIZIM University of Applied Sciences, then I noted down two things that I wanted to give us the emphasize as the answer to Vera's question. So what were the most like the biggest turns in our experience? First of all, I want to say for us, as a University of Applied Sciences, this was the moment when we got the status of research institution. It happened in 2015, quite a long time ago, but this was the moment when we really like opened up to different unexplored and unknown fields for us. We used to be an institution that gave good, solid, high-quality education, served the needs of region, of Latvia, prepared these young specialists and so on, but this research part really added something to our international cooperation, to the scope how we work. Basically what we implemented, this principle of you research what you teach and you teach what you research. I think that's one very important aspect. And the second, joining the European University Alliance. This is what I already told during my presentation, that in 2020 this is one of the, I would say, this very important turning points for us as an institution in this way of transformation.
Thank you. And let's talk about the factors which already have been mentioned. So what are enabler factors, and what are the obstacles that threaten or slow down the transformation, in your opinion? So we can start with France now.
So I think for such an ongoing transformation that never stops, as you mentioned, it's really a cultural topic and thing. So you know the famous sentence from Peter Drucker, who said, like, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And you always have to be aware of that sentence, what that means. You really have to work on the culture of your university, but also on the culture of your surrounding and your other stakeholders, of the region, of the SMEs, of the companies, of your students, of your researchers, to give them the right mindset to not only get stuck in what they usually focus on, but also look across the border, work together with others, with other stakeholders, with other sectors, in an interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, intersectoral way, and using all those new tools and things that we have at hand now, to the good for the region, for the university, for research. So that is the enabling factor, that when you really focus on that, like also developing your culture, and not only the culture of your university, but also of your surrounding with you, I think, or we think, then you can and will succeed.
Yeah, Mahendra can continue.
Yeah. I think before we come to the policies or whatever, the demand is there, it is the COVID-19 pandemic situation has accelerated whatever we wanted to change. And, another thing, basically the policy, of course, but COVID has completely changed the scenario of education. And accordingly, there are several changes that are happening, and industry is expecting more skill-oriented people to work in the organizations, and accordingly there is some change in the curriculum. These are one of the enabling factor. And second, of course, the changing environment of education because of the internationalization or involvement of foreign universities in India, that also contributed to change the mindset and the priorities of the educational institutions, particularly our institute. And the challenge is basically, or the hindrances that we are facing is, still the mindset of the faculty and to some extent the management, that, they are mainly focused on the skill-based activities, but there is no focus of research, and that is traditionally happening, and that should be changed. This is still a challenge for us because there are majority of the people working in the institutions are at basically having a minimum of 30 to 40 years, and at this stage it's very difficult to change their mindset, and that is going to be a challenge for us in the future as well. Thank you.
Yep. Does it work? Yeah. Yeah, changing culture, and I completely agree with you. And this takes a lot of time, especially in academia, because if the old professors, they're used to something, you never change them. Then, what's the solution? Yeah. But there is another factor I would stress. This is not factor even, but a process or phenomenon. This is leadership. And just take your, from your previous talk, adaptivity. So you should actually look to the situation. So what are the players in the scene? In our case, we need to work towards university main headquarters, because they have certain policies, as I mentioned already, that there was even a talk or this kind of discussion that maybe we should close them, those colleges. There is local government, regional authorities sometimes in some regions who have also different policies and ideas to also towards you, and understanding what you should be. This is, I was just this morning in the city government meeting, and we have some agreement with them, and they're supporting us, and then you should talk in the same way as they expect you talking. That's our story. And then you have national government, which is having also, and we now, we succeeded previous period to beat out money for the regional colleges for all over Estonia. We have 3 universities. They have 6 colleges outside of Tallinn and Tartu. And there are also some units of so-called state higher education institutions outside of cities. And we succeeded to get a line in the budget, so that in the last 2 years we got some extra money. But the new government now, after elections, be careful, they decided that they will increase general budget for the universities by 50% next year, and after next year, and after next year. But they will remove all their this kind of subsidies. And now the question mark is again at how we can proceed if we already counted to that money. Of course, we and different colleges, they behave differently. We work opening new curriculums based on fee, so that we selling goods to the market, service to the market, and if it's successful, if people want to buy it, we can sell it. And of course, there are some risks, but anyway, last year we opened one, we got immediately 40 students to the BA level. So it seems that this works. But another college in Haapsalu, they decided to open, using this state money, a new curriculum, free of charge. Now, next year, I would ask them how you can proceed with that. Okay, so this is the story. in this administrative, if you, when we speak about the leadership, then you should consider that there are different powers you possess. And usually higher education institutions, especially regional colleges, they don't have this institutional power to direct, to command local authorities or central government. You can only convince using your so-called expert or knowledge power, that you can convince people that this is important, you should do that. And you can also use so-called community or kind of social power, involving community, so that all school directors are your fans and all local government leaders are your fans, and then in one moment when there is a question to finance something, then they don't ask you any more questions, they just pay for that. So that this is the combining of different powers you can have, and yeah, this is enabling factors. Compared to the beginning, this is very much up to leadership, and be adaptive to circumstances, because and also you have to try at least to change the culture, otherwise, yeah, you will die out like old monasteries somewhere in Europe.
You spoke so much about funding, and I think it's quite symbolically that in front of us there is a plant which in Latvian is called the tree of money. So I hope it will have leaves when we go from the yeah. Take a leaf, because yeah, it grows from leaves very nicely. It's difficult actually to add something, because we all are in very similar situations. This culture thing and funding thing and community thing and everything. So it's very important. As maybe I can add a little kind of personal nuance to what has been already said. I was elected as rector only last October, so it's still not a year for me. And when I look back at these months, so that this culture thing is very important. It's very important to, as you said, communicate changes. And we know how difficult it's sometimes when you don't know yourself, where is this going to take us, or where are we actually heading, and communicate in the way that it is convincing, that you can have these people behind you, you can have the partners on board, and so on. And another thing I just recently heard is the concept of peacocking. So you know what is peacock? So this beautiful bird, a very bright colors from the front, and if you look at the bird from the back, then you see the real picture. So it's quite nothing. It's gray, maybe brown feathers, and it doesn't look very attractive. So this other side of changes, of transformation, which are very often messy, which are very often maybe not so successful as we were thinking at the beginning, where decisions have to be re-evaluated. Other directions have to be sought. So this is a very complex process, and you have to handle it. And it's basically like sometimes we say fixing an airplane while it's flying. So we are in this flight and going somewhere. There are lots of requirements externally and internally. People have expectations everywhere. Your founder, basically, a state for like in most in our cases. So they have certain expectations. They demand certain things. You have to convince them that you are able to deliver. And then this community around you, your partners, cooperation partners, also students, employees, and so on. So it's a lot of work, and I would say the communication very often, I think, is the key. How successful are we in communicating what we are trying to achieve, what we have achieved? Also, cherishing what has been achieved. As you said, that we all survived very successfully, I would say, this COVID period in most institutions, that we have taken these lessons and moving forward. So this learning also from experience, cherishing what we have, and so on. Yeah, that's basically my answer to this.
Thank you. Let's dig a bit deeper and talk about threats. And my next question is, what are threats of internal or external, or even both, transformation process in the university? And let's start with Gary now.
Okay, of course, the news about a year ago, what came, I couldn't think properly 2 days. And the worst thing is that this was Estonian also Independence Day, yeah, 24th of February. And I was looking all the time, all the day, at CNN, the next day after that, for the news and what's really going on. And luckily, Ukrainians, they were able to stop this in some point. Now we're looking for new advancement, and of course you know all the story. But it had also certain impact to the general understanding. Of course, we may be getting to use too much already that it's going on, and this is not anymore the main news in the headlines. But of course, this is what is outside of us. This is always a threat. And I also mentioned this governmental change. And they will have a new understanding about collaboration with universities, because universities are some sort of certain semi-public institutions in Estonia. So they are getting quite a nice support from the government. But it was during some nice politicians decided, or group of politicians, 2012, that higher education should be free of charge. Okay, nice. So they applied it. They increased the budget for the universities pretty nicely, and then forgot to increase it later on. But inflation was constantly eating the budgets. And then rectors finally, last year, they were already a very clear confrontation. They didn't sign a new contract for the next 3 years. So that finally the previous government decided that, okay, we will increase in next years by 15% their budget. So, okay. But in reality, in some faculties, for instance, especially in nature science faculty, probably 80% of the revenues is coming from the science. No one is interested about teaching anymore. And this is creating, again, problems within the university, because you cannot attract people anymore for teaching, because this is just the last thing they can imagine. And this is really, if you can imagine that a lawyer is graduating BA and get employed as an assistant to the judge, then he or she will get more salary than his or her associate professor. Yeah, and in the meanwhile, the salaries already of the secondary school teachers were higher than university teachers, which is also insane, but that was the story. Yeah, another thing is what is internal. This is very much back again to the leadership thing, but this is within the organization. So it's very tricky to, well, yeah, if you have a long collaboration with some people, then you can employ them, and everything runs well. But last year we got, we are expanding, so we need new people, and it's not easy to get people outside the big cities to the smaller place like Paranais. And so we didn't succeed with 2 persons. And then you need, of course, stop it quickly. If the relations are getting worse, then you need stop it, and we have to let them go. And now we employed new people already, so I hope that it will work. But yeah, this is when we're speaking about transformation, then this is one of the big issues of leaders, because yeah, you never know.
Thank you, Mahendra.
Okay. Yeah. Internally, we have a small hierarchy that is very good. Most of the times, it is very simple to take a decision on certain aspects. But at the same time, it will also lead to monopolic decisions. So that is also happening. Otherwise, a simple hierarchy is, that is basically contributing a lot for the development of the institute. And when it comes to another internal factor, we have a bureaucratic influence on the educational institutions, particularly sector-specific institutions, and that is also one of the challenge sometimes, although it is an advantage certain cases, but mostly it is a challenge to make them to understand. They think like any industry or administrative kind of a jobs, we need to work in similar those lines. That is a challenge that we are facing in the institutions like us, where there is a bureaucratic influence. But when it comes to the external factors about the students, yes, there is a change in the demand, particularly now in our sector-specific areas like tourism or retail or the hospitality areas. With a bachelor degree, they are getting better jobs, and they don't need master-level programs to study. And this is a challenge to attract the students for the master programs, because whatever the salary that they are getting at bachelor level is also same at master level. And another problem that basically these skill-based programs, they are learning more practically instead of going to the college, and where the distance education or virtual programs are playing a key role. And that is also another problem we are facing in terms of attracting the students. And even sometimes we are finding a difficulty to give the better task in terms of the assignments or the projects. They are not focused about all those things. They just want practical aspects which they are already learning from the industry. So this is challenge basically to attract for the full-time programs in our institution.
Thank you. Sounds a lot of things. And Franz, what about you?
So my colleagues were referring to external factors and to our target audience with the perspective of students. So maybe I can address the internal factors a little bit. And you were saying three things. You said some professors take more time to change, so it's about velocity, about speed of the change, right? So you said something about leadership and how to impose maybe some things on people or on the university. And you said something about communication. And because you tell so nice stories, I will try also to tell a story. So last Friday, that's true actually. So last Friday I went from my office to a meeting room, and when I arrived there, I saw that my trouser got dirty, so I had these white sprinkles on my trouser. So I knew from my office to this meeting room, somebody was painting a wall with a white color. But I didn't know which wall, I didn't know why, and they didn't put a sign up that they even do that. So all I saw, I have a dirty trouser, right? And so the first thing I want to say with that for your university, it's important to really be transparent of what you want to achieve and what you want to do. Which wall do you want to color in the white color? And why that wall and not the one in the basement? And you have to prioritize and also be like very communicative with these things so that everybody can follow. Don't forget steps in between. Put up the signs so that everybody knows, okay, what's the next step? Oh, here is work going on. I can work or I can contribute. So that are important things. And then when I went back to my students, one of them said, "Oh, it's a nice jean. So that's a designer jean, or what? You have that sprinkles on a trouser." And then I recognized, oh, it's not a bug, it's a feature, right? I have a new cool trouser now. So when you prioritize, not only think about what you want to achieve, which wall you want to paint, what you want to change with your university, but also what effect it has on the others, and try to have effects that are beneficial also for the others that are not participating in the core of your transformational path. Give them cool, sprinkled designer jeans, right? Do something that's also good for them. So that's what I want to say.
Thank you. Agnes, so what about us?
just to add two things I wanted to maybe, because there are a lot of things I already said and told, and I agree with many of these, but thinking about external factors or external threats, currently we are in a very interesting situation because the national government has decided that they want less universities in our country, following the examples of many different other countries around the world. So these mergers are happening, and in this process, Vidzeme University of Applied Sciences will stay independent. We are not going to join any of these ecosystems that are currently organized around the big science universities, these 4 science universities in Latvia. And for us it means that interesting times will start, because we are going to be objectively the one of the tiniest institutions, and of course we try to convince ourselves and others that there is a need for different size of fish in the pond. So there's bigger fish and there are smaller fish, and they make the diversity and show different ways how universities can develop. But on the other hand, so it means that we have to achieve a lot and impressive things. We have to do lots of peacocking at the end with the staff that we have and the resources that we have. So and this comes to the internal factor. We realize that already achieving this where we are now has taken a lot from us, and we really see the signs of burnout on all levels, and this has to be addressed very quickly and very, very seriously. And when I talk with other UDRAS partners, I think this is quite common for all institutions in regions, because now with this in words decentralization policies, but in works centralization policies in many ways, it's quite uncertain future, I would say, the least, not using a stronger word, basically. Yeah.
Well, maybe this is not helping you, but in the history of Tartu University, it has been 3 times when institutions were, departments were put together, centralization, and 3 times when they were split again to the smaller, so that it's up to the fashion. And now it's important to be higher in the world rankings. Then the bigger you are, the higher you in this ranking. That's the point.
Yes, so Franz touched a bit prioritization, so let's continue with this question. How your organization gets this right direction of transformation? So Franz can continue with this.
Yeah, so maybe I can follow up of what Agnese said with also the psychological factor of things. So we all have a very high speed in this transformation, right? And on the positive side, you see the people and the staff and the stakeholders, they are really committed to the goals because they really want to change something. And but on the other hand, on the negative side, this can lead to this kind of things. You have a high speed in this transformation, like everybody's committed, everybody wants to achieve something, and then you get these problems. So you need to prioritize. How do you do it? The same way. You have to really communicate a lot. You have to take all these people into the boat. I mean, UDRAS has fantastic formats to get really all stakeholders on the table, to really get these different perspectives, and then at some point you have to make the decision. You have to take over the leadership and say, okay, we have that and that and that option, but you have to make the one decision. What do we do next? So bring in all perspectives, bring everything to the table, but then also decide what you want to do. Which wall you want to paint next, right? So.
Thank you. Mahendra?
Yeah. On paper, there are so many things that they are mentioning in public meetings. You know, they are talking much about, you know, the research and the development or transformation or whatever you call. Unfortunately, there is no environment provided in that regard. So I think the university or institutions should provide environment, and there should be targets, and that's how the faculty or the professors need to be, you know, changed their mindset. And the second, it is important that we need to change the curriculum according to the industry needs. It doesn't mean that they are not part of the curriculum preparation or whatever, but practically it is not happening. Involving the actual industry people and having a target or maybe some mechanism to question that. Accordingly, they can be placed, and this will help us, the institutes, to continue with the bachelor or master programs to continue and make it on par with the industry needs.
Thank you. Gary, okay.
Okay, I'm ready. There was a publication 2004 by Harald Bartelt, Andres Melberg, and Peter Muskel. Clusters and Knowledge, Local Bus, Global Pipelines, and the Process of Knowledge Creation. And I've been referring it to many times, and I think it has some 5,000–6,000 quotations already, and it's really, and the main thing is pipeline. So you suck some knowledge from anywhere from the world, from India, from Austria, from Latvia, and then you need to transform it into your own language, not linguistically only, but also culturally, that people can understand that this is important. That there's a new trend, how it works for us, why it's important for us, for instance, Rail Baltic. Apparently we'll get Rail Baltic, hopefully in 10 years. Yeah? It means that there will be 93 minutes to Ülemiste Airport and 1 hour and 10 minutes to Riga Airport, which means that Pärnu, instead of being peripheral, it's kind of a resort town, will be suburban to any world city, because Riga has now so many connections so that all European cities are connected. Which means that there will be a completely different situation in 10 years' time. But we should sell it to the companies, colleagues, that there will be change, and you need this great vision, but of course you need to so-called sell or to explain it, what does it mean for us, and this bus is really important, and how you can acknowledge people that there will be change and what is important for us. This is really work with your people. We have regular meetings, sub-meetings, free times, plus all those regional colleges, they have also their summer days. So 4 times a year we get together for overnight stays. We will have a sauna. Have you been in sauna? Not yet. Okay, you will. And this means that they communicate, and this is the bus. You're talking about important things and less important things, like cats, for instance. Yeah, but people obtaining this knowledge in that way, and this really, we want to be good friends for you because you have AI. Knowledge. And University of Tartu take a very positive approach to AI. Some countries in the world, even Italy, forbid AI use. So I don't know what will happen with them, but anyway.
How clever.
How clever. You got it.
Yeah, to answer this last question, I want to maybe come back to what I said at the beginning. This adaptation is the key, but I also disagree a little bit with Franz, said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So the strategy, I think, is the kind of light at the end of the tunnel that you have to keep always there in front of you. And it's very important that the strategy is developed bottom up with the bottom up approach, because I believe that the strategy you were talking about probably was, I don't know, written in some rector's office with one person just kind of doing the thing and that putting in a shelf and so, okay, we have the strategy and that's so. But make it really a document or a kind of frame or guide that has these important points that can help you in making decisions, because what happens around universities now can take you in any direction, and it's very important to keep something in front of you and know where you want to go in this, as Gary mentioned, in this culture of what was it? Times higher education, and so this rankings, and the culture of rankings. So for us, this is not an option. So we have to look at something else. So how to prove that we are relevant and we are important and we are worth listening to. So yeah.
So I wanted to bring in the quote as a kind of provocative statement, and I'm really happy that you catch this hook, because I see it the same way, obviously. So there's a difference in strategy if it's done like in a very isolated way or in a participative way. And the second way is the right one, and then you can succeed, obviously.
Thank you all. We already heard some useful information, and my last question is, so listeners take some notes. What would be, in your opinion, first 2, 3 steps or even more that you would recommend to organizations that are planning to start their transformation process or they already started it? Agnes can be first now.
Actually, I can't imagine a university that is not in constant transformation process. It's always there, so it's difficult to imagine. So what to advise now? Start. You haven't done anything for years. Start now. It's very, very context specific. It's the countries' policies, it's also the type of university. We are representing a very diverse landscape of how universities can operate, and then also what are the expectations from them? What is the environment when they are working? I think we already mentioned many things. So this bottom-up approach, very open discussion, and then at one point knowing when to take the decision, and then not looking back, and really trying to achieve what we have decided, and then yeah, I think that's and funding. We have the money, the tree of money in front of us. I think, yeah, where are you gonna to have funds for doing things? Because pure enthusiasm doesn't work. No.
I'm trying to be clever. First, when I'm going to lead some organization, I have few experience. Then I ask, what did you so far? And then people realize that, he's going to not changing anything. Nice. And then I'm starting to ask, what you're not satisfied with? So what are the problems? This is the problem. Then we start to solve these problems. And then, of course, in the meantime, I've been also working with the media and asking people, getting acknowledged those media people. And then if you need to change something seriously, then at least 2 years, 3 years takes time. You should take some innovation. You should convince people that this should be changed. And then, finally, you talk it in the media about the stuff. Then people listen for the media. Oops, this is already talking in the media. Obviously, this needs to be done.
Yeah, as my fellow panelists mentioned, that it is important that not just showing it on media. Practically, we should work on that. Certain things we can't expect change overnight. That's what exactly happens whenever the new administration, like the director or whatever rector or university that. Chancellor in our context, because we have a different system, they'll prioritize in a different way every time. They just give a target, but they want everything overnight. I think that need to be changed, and they need to provide quality time in order to change, and also resources accordingly. For example, suddenly they want to make a #1 university in research in terms of publications, but is it really about the publication or quality of publication? That needs to be worked on. And second, are we really providing such environment in the institutions to do the research? That is also questionable. That is not happening our Indian universities, particularly in social science. I think that needs to be changed. And the bureaucrats always, they expect visible things, not the intellectual aspects. So the visual, like in terms of activities, the conferences, regular programs. But is it really, that conference helpful? Is really, there are some quality papers published. So those things are missing. I think they need to work on that. And most importantly, the teaching staff need to be trained according to the changing aspect, like curriculum or maybe use of a new technology or the tools. That also one of the important things that need to be happen in Indian context. Thank you.
Finally, Franz.
So what I find interesting at the moment is, like, often companies in general change or have evolutionary stages to get some advantages on the market or something. But when we are talking about university transformation now, it's not about any of us getting some individual advantages over each other. So the whole sector is transforming, and we all feel it, and we all do it if we ask our guests here. Like, everybody of you has her or his own story of your ongoing transformation to tell. And so the nice and interesting thing is we transform together, and the most important thing is that we have formats like that and weeks like this to really exchange our experiences and not to hide things from each other. Nobody does that at the moment. I have the impression really everybody wants to work together and have this kind of transformation together. And that's actually a very interesting, also challenging, but nice thing to see.
Thank you. I hope all of us get this inspiration and transformation process. I wish the best for us in this ongoing transformation, and I would like to say big thanks to our panel discussion participants and to the listeners. And before I say goodbye, I welcome those who are here. Enjoy our panel discussion participants at the coffee break and ask some questions or continue discussions. And I wish you an inspiring week at Vidzim University of Applied Sciences, Valmiera. Thank you one more time, and goodbye.